July 9, 2011, the world's newest nation was born. After 22 years of brutal civil war, South Sudan finally gained independence from Sudan. 2 million people had died fighting for this moment. The celebration was euphoric. The hope was boundless. But just 14 years later, that dream has turned into a nightmare. Today, South Sudan stands on the precipice of collapse again. This is the story of a nation trapped in an endless cycle of violence, corruption, and broken promises. In 2013, just 2 years after independence, civil war erupted. President Salva Kiir from the Dinka ethnic group and his vice president Riek Machar Anwar turned on each other. The conflict quickly became ethnic. The violence was horrific. By 2018, after 5 years of devastation, the warring parties signed a peace deal that revitalized agreements on the resolution of conflict in South Sudan, or RRCs. It created a power-sharing government. Kiir remained president. Machar returned as first vice president. South Sudan would have 5 vice presidents total under this complex arrangement. The peace deal promised democratic elections, security sector reforms, a unified national army, and constitutional reform. But here's the brutal truth: almost none of it happened.
The leaders of South Sudan don't see any self-interest in rushing into elections. As long as the transition remains in force, they remain in power, unelected but willing and able to plunder public resources.
Elections were scheduled for 2015, then postponed to 2018, then December 2021, then 2023, then December 2024, and now they are scheduled for December 2026, the fourth postponement in a decade. Each time, the same excuses: not enough preparation, no census completed, no permanent constitution drafted. The transitional government has extended its own mandate 4 times. The parliament amended the electoral timeline within a single day. A clear violation of South Sudan's constitution. No one has been held accountable. On March 4, 2025, everything changed. In the town of Nasser in Upper Nile State, a stronghold of Vice President Machar, a militia group known as the White Army, attacked a government military base. The White Army is a loose confederation of armed youths, like any use in South Sudan. President Kiir's regime response was swift and devastating. Government forces launched airstrike and ground operation. Human rights groups documented the use of improvised incendiary weapon. At least 58 civilians died. Over 80,000 people were displaced. But Kiir did not stop there. On March 26, heavily armed security forces surrounded Machar's residence in Juba. They placed him under house arrest. His wife, Interior Minister Angelina Tang, was also detained. Their guards were disarmed and taken to unknown locations. Over the following months, security forces arrested more than 24 political and military figures aligned with Machar's party, the SPLM-IO. They were held incommunicado, no charges, no lawyers, no access to family for 6 months. Then, on September 11, charges were finally announced: murder, treason, terrorism, and crimes against humanity. That same day, President Kiir formally suspended Machar from his position as first vice president. On September 22, 2025, Riek Machar appeared in public for the first time since his arrest. He and 7 co-defendants, all of them Nuer, were displayed inside a steel cage in a makeshift courtroom. The trial was broadcast live on state television. The trial has sparked outrage and fear across South Sudan. In Bantu, the capital of Unity State and Machar's home region, protesters took to the streets. Many see this not as justice, but as political score settling wrapped in legal language. Defense lawyers have challenged the court's jurisdiction, arguing that the arrest violated due process. Several defendants were arrested without warrants. One sitting lawmaker was detained despite Parliamentary immunity. President Kiir authorized Machar's arrest verbally. No written order existed. A formal letter lifting Machar's immunity wasn't issued until months after his detention and interrogation. The trial continues. More than 100 witnesses are expected to testify, and while the government insists this is about criminal accountability, almost no one believes it. Here's what makes 2025 particularly dangerous for South Sudan. Everything is collapsing at once. South Sudan depends on oil for more than 90% of its government revenue. But the country has no direct access to the sea. All of its oil must be exported through pipelines running through Sudan to Port Sudan on the Red Sea. Since April 2023, Sudan has been engulfed in its own brutal civil war. The pipeline has been damaged. Exports have been disrupted. Sudan's military has threatened to shut down South Sudan's oil facilities entirely, suspecting Juba of supporting their enemies, the Rapid Support Forces. Without oil revenue, South Sudan's economy has entered freefall. Security personnel and civil servants haven't been paid in almost a year, the incentive to maintain peace evaporating. 7.7 million people, over 2/3 of the population, need humanitarian assistance. 83,000 people at risk of famine. Nearly 80% of South Sudanese live below the poverty line. And it's getting worse. The war in Sudan has forced 1.2 million refugees and returnees into South Sudan since 2023, straining resources that didn't exist in the first place. The humanitarian response plan for 2025 is only 28.5% funded. Aid workers face violence and intimidation. The rainy season has ended and localized violence is spiking. As if to underscore the chaos, on November 18, 2025, President Kiir announced a sweeping political reshuffle. He reinstated Dr. James Wani Iga as vice president, the same man he dismissed in February. He removed 4 national ministers, including Michael Makweleth, who had controlled the information ministry for over a decade and imposed tight controls on media. But the most dramatic move involved Benjamin Bolmer, a prominent businessman who had risen rapidly in political influence. Bolmer was removed as vice president and as first deputy chair of the ruling SPLM party. He was stripped of his 4-star general rank and dismissed from the National Security Service. No reason was given, though reports suggest internal power struggles and alleged misuse of government revenues. It's classic South Sudan politics, a game of thrones where positions are traded like currency, loyalty shifts overnight, and accountability is non-existent. The United States warns the country is on the brink of civil war. The 2018 peace agreement, already fragile, may be collapsing entirely. The trial of Riek Machar could be the spark that reignites ethnic violence on a massive scale. International partners, the African Union, the Intergovernmental Authority on Development, the United Nations continue to call for dialogue and restraint, but their influence is limited. Several embassies, including Germany's, have temporarily closed. The people of South Sudan have lived through unimaginable suffering. They have survived colonialism, war, famine, displacement. They voted overwhelmingly for independence in 2011, believing in a better future. But 14 years later, that future seems further away than ever. Elections scheduled for December 2026 may never happen. The unified army was never built. The permanent constitution was never written. The leaders whose promised peace have delivered only more conflict.